Osiris.
Welcome to another episode of Goose Chicks podcast, an all women-led show focused on the band Goose and the community that supports them. I'm Leslie Mack, producer and co-host, and on this episode, we take a cue from the amazing Peter Anspach, who frequently says, "Be kind to each other out there." And we will be talking about the role of consent in the jam band scene a little bit later in the show with Ashley Driscoll, who is the founder of GrooveSafe. But before that, let's do a brief check-in and go through our running segments. How is everybody doing? How's life?
Awesome. Good. Just running as usual. How about y'all?
Busy.
Hannah's first day back today.
I've never had to teach 3 classes in a row before.
What a day.
You can see Hannah's just like, since y'all can't see.
As soon as you came on, I was like, oh, Hannah, how's it going? That first week is rough. It's very rough. Chelsea, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm just trying to stay productive. So
awesome. Good. Well, we're going to go through a few of our running segments, but our conversation with Ashley is going to be really deep. And Hannah, I was hoping you could just do a quick kind of like content warning really quick, just so people understand that we are going to be talking about some delicate subjects and help people be aware of that before we go into the rest of the show.
Sure. So today with Ashley, we're going to be talking about issues related to interpersonal violence, and that can be triggering for some folks, especially we will touch on sexual assault and inappropriate touching and that sort of thing. So if you need to take a break from our podcast, I mean, we always talk a lot, so that's not shocking if you do. But if you need to take a break, be kind to yourself, be kind to other people who might be listening with you, and you utilize resources in your community if you need to seek out any sort of therapy or anything. I know me personally, I like a good social worker, licensed social worker to help me through my issues when I need to talk to someone. So just be aware of that and listen to what your body needs.
Thanks so much, Hannah. All right, we're going to actually skip our normal How Do We Get Down segment because we spend a lot of time talking about lyrics and we want to give as much time as we can to Ashley. But we are going to do our Goose Talk segment, and I'm going to throw it over to Alexius to talk about what's this week's topic. What are we letting folks know about?
So this week we are going to be talking about Fred Fest 1 that happened. Some people know about it, some people don't, like newer people coming in the scene. So this happened last summer, and it was August 20th through the 22nd, and it was in Arrington, Virginia at Lock and Farm. And it was one of the 3 weeks they had coming out of the bubble of COVID. And so Goose got an entire weekend for it. And so they had their own little festival, and it was, I was there. This festival was so awesome, and probably, like we all say, it was like the cement of the ones of us like becoming friends and coming out of it. And right before, they were taking off, but it was, they were already taking off, but this was just this is a little awesome, fun weekend, like very intimate. They had what was called the Fred Fest Games. And so it was like Team Ted, Team Fred, Team Larry, and Team I'll see, but so they had it like Friday, August 20th, and they had Dolls, Vasudo, Grateful Shred, Elephant Proof, which is one of which is Ben's side project. And then Saturday, the 21st, they had Goose, Corey Wong, love Corey Wong, Sammy Ray and the Friends, Grateful Shred. And Sunday, August 22nd, they had Goose, Mr. Dog, his Golden Messenger, and Acoustic Trio, which I guess was kind of like a Rayblow before Rayblow was a Rayblow. And so if you don't know about Vasudo was a side project, or before Goose came about, Vasudo was a lot of Goose's content has come from them, and Matt Campbell was a part of that. And so I think Ben wasn't a part of it, and I think Jeff wasn't. And then at Fred Fest, Peter played in it, but he wasn't a part of it to begin with. But, I don't know if people know about Basuto. I was really excited about talking about Fred Fest because I've spoken about it before. Basuto is kind of like, there was Floyd Fest and then there was Fred Fest. And, and Fred Fest is when it definitely locked in for me. And Basuto was there. And it's like the reggae version of Goose. I don't know if y'all have ever, I would definitely say look them up if you haven't looked them up. But a lot of amazing songs from Goose actually came from Basuto. So Hot Tea, Rockdale, Factory Fiction, Flow Down, Butter Rum, Tumble, Turbulence in the Night Rays, Echo of a Rose, Empress of Oregano's, Wisteria, the Undecided, which, and so, but a lot of the songs came from Basuto. And so it was really exciting to actually be able to see them in person. That's when I was so excited about Goosemas, when I was like, oh my gosh, I ran into Matt Campbell, and and he and Rick are writing together. And now everyone can see why I was so pumped about it, because like some of the most amazing songs have come from Rick and Matt. And so really super duper pumped about that. And I was super blessed to be able to see them, got a shirt and everything, and, didn't know how awesome they were until they came on stage. And I was like, are you serious? For real? So Fred Fest was a very fun weekend. And so that's why a lot of us are, screaming for where's Fred 2? Where's Fred 2? And so we definitely need a Fred 2 coming, and something for a music festival for all of us Goose fans, that it's like types of music that we love. And so that's a little bit about Fred Fest. And I don't want to I could talk a lot more about it, but I know we don't have much time. So I'm just going to leave it at that, and we can touch on it later.
I love it. Thanks so much. Jeff was in Basuto, though, which I always found really interesting, that he was in Basuto, but then wasn't in Goose at first and then was in Goose. It's a very interesting. Jeff's interesting. Anyways, I was just noting that, and it also goes to speak to, when we think about the Goose sound, as it evolved, Peter was in Great Blue before, and some of Goose songs also come from that band. And that, I don't know, I always say that Rick is sort of like bit of Dr. Frankenstein, that he sort of has spent all of these years since 2013, 2012, putting the perfect mix together to figure out what was the exact right pieces that we needed to have. And obviously Ben is such a huge driver of the sound of Goose, and having Jeff not just on drums but on percussion added another kind of level to it, and then Peter being on keys. So all of those things I think are really just speaks so much to Goose being this mega group made up of all these musicians who've been playing together in other ways. So thanks for sharing that. And yeah, hopefully there will be a Fred 2. That would be amazing.
Hopefully.
Absolutely. Next, we usually have a fan art spotlight, but we wanted to actually do a little bit of a PSA today about fan arts. And I'm going to turn the floor to Chelsea to give the PSA out to everyone.
Well, thank you. So, as you all know, the Goose community is full of a lot of fan artists, people that make clothing with Goose logos, Goose merch, slaps, tie-dye, jewelry, artwork, tons of different people out there. Be nice to fan artists. Artists are human. They're running a small business. It's really hard to run a small business. I consider myself a fan artist. I run a small business. It's just me doing everything. So just remember, people are putting themselves out there. They're being really vulnerable with their creative passion, and putting it out there in the first place is really hard for some people to do. So make sure you're being respectful. If it's not your cup of tea, you don't even have to say anything. Just move along. It'll be fine. Make sure if you do love something, you use it, you post it, you buy something, give artists credit, tag them in your stories, in your posts. That's really helpful for artists. It gives them word of mouth and gets their name out there. And make sure you're giving artists credit when you, if you love their stuff. Also,
we love your stuff.
Oh, thank you,
Chelsea. We love your stuff.
Thank you. I just tagged Jively Designs today because I got my slaps from her. Thank you, girl. They're so beautiful, and she sent me extras. I got the Goose Girl slaps, so I'm excited. So thank you, Jively. And I followed my own advice. I tagged her, I messaged her, told her thank you, all the good things. Do remember that these are people, humans running their own business. They have a life doing other things as well. And sometimes people make mistakes. They run out of time, or they're running behind, or things like that. So just remember to also have patience and understanding if you're ordering something from a fan artist, and just give them that room to, make their creative artwork and get it out there to everyone while still having a life to enjoy elsewhere otherwise as well. And that's all I have to say, really. Is there anything else anyone wants to add?
I think you said it all, but yeah, just people are human. Make sure you treat them as such. And I find people give like large companies so much leeway, so much benefit of the doubt, and they never apply that to small businesses. And so I just wanted to mention that, like, have the same patience that you have for Target and Amazon and whoever that you have that you have for those large entities that really you shouldn't, because they have a lot of resources. But have that same, patience with smaller businesses too. So I thank you for that. And we'll continue to spotlight fan arts, but we just wanted to, because this episode is about being kind, we wanted to just make sure that we were clear on our stance around fan art. And this goes for photographers as well. Make sure you're tagging them if you're sharing their photos, and just shouting them out, because most of them are doing this work for free. They're not paid to go to these shows. The shows that they go to, it's money coming out of their pocket. There's very few professional photographers that are actually hired by bands. So most of the folks you see out there snapping pictures and capturing these moments that we get to relive after the fact are doing so because this is a passion of theirs. So be respectful of them, be respectful of artists, and just love on them, because their art is how they show their love. And so we want to give that love back to them.
And I would also like to say, negative comments do not, it's so funny because people will have a positive comment in their head and not write that down, not tell something to someone. But if someone has a negative comment to say, they will quickly put that in the comments. And so let's just remember, if you have a positive comment to say, it's always nice to send that quick positive note and for the person to hear, and it helps them through the day. Always, if you hear something positive, it helps brighten your day. So write that quick little positive note, and just remember, you don't have to write that negative note. Just hit delete. If you write it, just hit delete at the end. Don't hit send. Just hit delete. Keep it
in your notes. Keep it in your notes, Doc. That's what I would. Exactly. And also, most people have a way for you to actually just directly get in touch with them if you do have something to say. Right? It doesn't have to be public. So I'll just note that. Last segment is Podcast Flowdown, and I'm giving a shout out this week to the Go Love Yourself podcast, which is hosted by Laura Adlington and Lauren Smith, who are on a mission to empower you to feel good about yourself. Join them as they talk about everything from diet culture to dating, mental health to social media, fashion, and giving zero F's about what people think. They are in the UK, so they're British and their accents are awesome. They're really funny. They're super honest. Their most recent episode that came out this week talks about living in an anti-diet culture in 2023. So shout out to them, and we'll have a link for you to go check out all of the things that they are doing on our show notes. All right. So as I said at the top of the show, we are so blessed. We're going to have Ashley Driscoll, who is the founder of GrooveSafe, join us right after this short break. We'll be right back. Just the way
guys. I just want to mention real quick, we work with, not directly, but we support fully this organization called GrooveSafe. And just want to make sure everyone's being good and respectful to everyone out there. Heard mostly good things last night, but if people indulge too much, just, look out and, try to, just be good to other people and be smart, make good choices.
Oh, yeah.
We very much appreciate that.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone, as we mentioned earlier in the show, we have a special guest on Goose Chicks podcast this week, and we are so excited to welcome Ashley Driscoll, who is the founder of GrooveSafe. And for those who don't know, GrooveSafe is an initiative to stop unwanted touching, harassment, and sexual assault in live entertainment spaces. The mission of this nonprofit is to create a no-tolerance environment with an emphasis on building consent culture. The goal at GrooveSafe is to shift the culture in places where we gather for live music and entertainment to create safer environment. This movement brings awareness to sexual misconduct and teaches that a change in behavior starts with a recognition of the problem. And GrooveSafe focuses on educating bands and venues and fans on tactics that aim to improve the live music experience. We are so blessed and so excited to have Ashley join us. Thank you for being here, Ashley. Thank you for joining us. How are you doing today?
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me. I'm doing well. Hope you guys are too. I'm excited to be here. It's really cool what you guys are doing. So
thank you so much. And I was so glad I got to see you at Goosemess, which was so amazing. And it's so great to see you out there on the road with the flock. I'm going to actually turn the mic over to our contributor, Hannah, who is going to put her women's studies hat on and lead the discussion here. We'll be popping in, myself and Alexius, as we go along. But Hannah, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so thank you for being here, Ashley. I'm super excited for this episode. So just to sort of kick things off, if you want to tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up in the jam band scene.
Okay. Well, I am from Massachusetts, born and raised in a Boston suburb, spent a lot of time on Cape Cod. I went to Roanoke College in Virginia and studied psychology, and I didn't actually use the psychology skills, well, in my everyday life, of course, but until like the GrooveSafe work really started. But yeah, I've been a music lover my whole life. I think I got introduced to Dylan and the Dead when I was about 16. And one of my really good friends from the prep school I went to, boarding school, her older brother was into Phish. And so I kind of learned a little bit about that then. And then my roommate in college, my very first freshman roommate, was a full-blown Phish hippie. So I learned a lot more then. And I really felt like that was kind of my people and in my really strong interests in that. So I started as a Dead fan, moved into Phish, and then had, I've been to hundreds of shows, and really it became my passion, just chasing live music, mostly jam band style music. But I've probably been to 600, 700 concerts in general, from festivals to just like, one-off shows in the neighborhood or.
So you're a pro.
Yeah, I've been to a lot of concerts. And so I guess when you think about why I do what I do now is because of countless experiences, from good to bad to ugly, I guess. So I think that is sort of the beginning. And I kind of just got addicted to chasing music. We also say, I don't know if you guys are going to be putting this into the content, but it's really important for people to know that are listening that the topic of GrooveSafe can be tricky. It can be sensitive. It can be triggering, whether you've experienced trauma or not. So just be kind to yourselves and take breaks if you need to, because we really believe that all of us, everyone on the panel and the listeners, your safety is always first, because this stuff is hard. And that's why I'm doing this work, to make it easier, which I'm sure we'll get into the whys. But there's no doubt about it that it's a tough topic. So that's just being said first. Well, before Hannah has, more reflections, I think it's just important for everybody to know that.
For sure. Real quick, Ashley, what boarding school did you go to? It
was called Governor Dummer Academy. It is now called the Governor's Academy. I went there from just junior and senior year. I found like I needed a different style of learning, and I was fortunate to have that opportunity. So I lived away at high school for the last 2 years. So I got like pre-college prep, living away from home kind of thing. And it was actually a really good experience for me. Socially, I don't know, but as far as education goes, and it set me up to go to school and play some.
I went to boarding school as well. So that's why I'm always like, where did you go? I went to boarding school for all 4 years of high school. It was
okay.
A big part of my identity. So that's really dope and super cool. All right. I just wanted to ask because I didn't know that.
I was a public school kid all the way through.
Same until I went to boarding school. Yeah, I was in public schools my whole life as well. Well, next time I see you, we'll have to trade boarding school stories for sure.
I don't know. I don't know if you want to, but I talked to a very close old friend earlier this evening. So it's kind of fun to talk about that school because we were just kind of having a quick conversation earlier. So
love it.
Anyways.
Go ahead, Hannah.
Yeah. Well, I think you started talking about this a little bit, but was there anything that you were experiencing going to all these shows where you had this light bulb moment of like GrooveSafe, or did it just evolve over time? Like, what was that experience like?
I think that, it definitely came from personal experiences. That there's no doubt about that. I started to feel uncomfortable and anxious and anticipating the shows kind of in a bad way, where I used to be really excited to go, looking forward to it. What are they going to play? Where are we sitting? Who's coming? What's the meetup like? What's the lot like? But then I slowly started to feel tense. And I kind of dove into it a little bit and realized that it was because my experiences at the shows weren't what they used to be. Or I started to realize that this unwanted advances and people touching my body without my permission, or even just pushing me out of the way. The spectrum of things I've experienced are wide. And obviously everybody experiences trauma differently. So you put it all together and I just wasn't having fun anymore. I felt like I was checking my space, my safety, wondering who was around me more than focusing on the show. And I was not letting go and opening up and experiencing, the beauty of the music and the environment. I was, like I said, checking, looking around and really closed in to the point that I was physically kind of in almost like a ball, where my shoulders were rolled forward. And I said, this isn't fun. What is missing or what is happening? And I just started to think about that a little bit. So I guess it developed over time, realizing that the scene wasn't the same. And I guess, again, let me back up, because there's always been sexual assaults and misconduct and harassment everywhere where people gather. But I started to grow up and realize that it was really bothering me. And then I had one incident specifically, again, trigger warning. Someone tried to put their hand up my skirt at a show one time. And I blamed myself. I was like, what did I do? What was I wearing? Because I didn't know any better. And then I said, hey, wait, no, like this feeling is violation. This feeling is that reaction to being hurt. And so that was like, I guess, the light bulb or whatever, but I had been thinking about this for some time. And then I started to talk about it more intently, like trying to get people in my peers and people in the space to either listen or, it was right around Me Too movement too. So people were starting to talk about their experiences a little bit more. And so online forums and kind of just basic research started to show that it was really a big problem, but people were afraid to talk about it. It was, like I said, it's extremely awkward because it's historically, socially been awkward and swept under the rug. And, hey, it's no big deal. Live a little, don't cause problem. The whole story about why people don't speak up, or if you don't, we can talk about that too. But ultimately, I decided I had two choices: stop seeing music or try to change it. And I, being a defiant human, other things, I said, no way. Like, why do I have to stop? I'm not going to just stay home because people can't behave themselves. So I think that's where GrooveSafe itself was born. The word groove came from a Fish song. It's a quote called "Sharon in the Groove" from Mike's song. And I just wanted to be like sharing the groove, but with consent. Like, I wanted to be able to do it where I could wear what I want. I could dance how I want. I could look, I wanted to feel good and act great and not feel like it was an invitation. And because I didn't think it was fair, put a couple extra sparkles on it and something a little tighter and your target. Again, we'll talk about this if you want. You never know when it's going to happen, but I felt personally like I was doing something. And so all of that coming together was sort of the birth of the movement. And it was definitely grassroots to start. It took a lot of people, it's hard to get people to listen, and because it's awkward, people shut down. So the approach I've always taken is like non-aggressive. It's awareness and activism, but not in your face, because it's still trauma-based. And when you're talking about introducing this topic to like men, for example, if they aren't aware of it, they have been trained and conditioned to feel like attacked, like their whole gender did something wrong. And it's more than that, everybody deserves respect. And so it becomes more of a behavior change. And that's why we call it building consent culture, because we want to shift from what is known as rape culture into consent culture, where people can exist together and not have to feel like they're, their body and spaces can be violated at any moment, I guess.
That's awesome.
I love how you said you had that moment of like, well, either I stop going and doing this thing that I really love, or I try to change it. I think so many amazing change makers in our society, they find themselves at that exact crossroads. And, hearing how many shows you've been to and how important live music was to you, just thank you for not taking the other path and kind of stepping away. And so I just want to just commend you for that. And just because that crossroads is a tough one to come to. In any number of arenas. But I think really, especially when you love something as much as we all love live music, it's really hard. It's a really hard thing to kind of face. And so just kudos to you. I'm just really impressed and thankful for your work.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it's people, when people come to the table, we get questions about like, what is this and what are you doing? And people that don't know about the issue, when they're hesitant or they're not sure, or like whatever conditioning they've had is telling them like, no way, that doesn't happen. Not here. I've never seen it. Blah, blah, blah. I say, hey, I did not want to continue to go see music. Put it there. Just start with that thought. If I was being bothered so often and I was so uncomfortable that I didn't want to do this anymore, you're here at a show talking to me, right, person? Like, I want to be here at a show doing all of the things that you're doing. Now that we can talk about it, but I was like, this has to stop. And so that helps people realize, like, you had the feeling, wait, not see shows or change it? Like, okay, because not seeing shows was an option. And I'm so glad also that I didn't, because it's been quite a journey, but that's why we're sitting here on this podcast today.
And denial seems to be the way that people, they automatically react. They want to deny that it's happening, that it's easier to act like that this hasn't happened and to put it out of their mind than to accept that it has happened, even if they haven't done that, and even if they've seen it and they're not even acknowledging that they've seen it. They're just putting, like a veil on it. And so I'm sure this has been a lot of hard work, because denial is always the road that people want to take and just act like it hasn't happened. And I haven't seen that happen. I haven't seen that happen. So I'm sure this hasn't been easy. And like you said, just, talking to people and saying, I'm here and I didn't want to be here. And I'm sure that's been a lot of work.
Yeah. The denial happens a lot of times too, because we want our jam band scene to be, loving and open and heady and love and light and this, but there are people that need to get their behaviors adjusted everywhere. And, so when people say, oh, no way, not at this show. And I say very kindly, hey, look, I'm partnered with the band. They invited me here because they know this is happening and they want us to show you and teach you and talk to you. And, not even in a know-it-all way, but like, I'm your friend, man. I want to be out in that concert too. I want to be able to close my eyes at a show. I know I can't do that. So like I said earlier, like I really want it to be education and peer understanding, kind of showing them from my point of view. Because if you start to stick your finger in someone's face, they're going to stop listening to you.
Right. Yeah. So. And if people would just, take the peer education and teach it to their peers, it would be a little bit easier and we wouldn't have to worry about this all the way around. But, it's crazy the things that I have actually seen happen. And so I'm happy that we're here talking about this because, it's definitely not cool when people take it to another level and they think, oh, this is cool. And no, that's not cool. So consent is very important and communication is very important.
Right. And I mean, that's what we're here is these behaviors have to change in the fan community, in amongst us, our friends, our peers, our showgoers, because those are the people who are the offenders and they don't have to be predators, but and that is where this change is going to happen. And so that's the main focus, of the fan interaction that we have is the people that, do have the tool, the opportunities to make the change and they don't know they do. And so that's what kind of a lot of the conversations and my goals are to try to tell everybody. And then having that conversation continue, talk about it later, hold your friends accountable, have conversations before the show about, substance use, not abuse, whatever. But I mean, I guess it could be abuse if your substance use is putting people's safety at risk, but that's another topic. Maybe it's in Hannah's question.
Yeah, that's part of it.
Let's get there. Yeah. So I feel like that's all part of this, right? There's all kinds of stuff to it.
One thing that really strikes me as you were is that Leslie's talked a little bit about how she essentially has modified her behavior by not going to the pit at fish shows. And I've talked a little bit about modifying my behavior in my late teens, early 20s to now, and how there's certain things I won't do because I don't want to be treated a certain way or whatever. And so what I think all that actually kind of is buying into victim blaming, because essentially we're saying we're the ones that have to change our behavior so that we aren't, no one touches us inappropriately or treats us wrongly. And I never thought of that as like being a part of victim blaming culture. But when I hear you talk about how you're like, no, I'm still going to go to these shows. I'm not going to modify my behavior. I'm going to change the culture. That's just so powerful. So like, wow. I mean,
I got you.
Yeah. Like, it's just like,
but don't forget, anyone listening and you guys, this is 5.5 years of work. So I don't want anybody to think that I immediately was like, screw this, whatever. Because it was a journey. Like I told you at the top, like I blamed myself. I was really upset. Every single time I got touched inappropriately, it brought every single trauma back, brought every single other experience back. I felt alone. And I tell this story a lot, so sorry if you've heard me say it before, but after the experience with the skirt, I will not go to a concert without biker shorts under the skirt, even if it's ankle length. I will always, always, always wear what I call is like a protective layer or Band-Aid or whatever. And it goes down to the fact that I can boogie harder. I could sit without my legs crossed, but it's also because of that experience, I want to be able to not, that has to be a Band-Aid or a barrier between me and that trauma. So what you're saying is correct. I have come pretty far in it and whatever. And that seems like a victim blaming piece where people who have experienced this or not have to change their behavior to avoid it. And that is the opposite of how I want it to end up. Like, even if we have to, pause, but change our behaviors for a short time and pause with that while the change happens. And then my huge and most important goal is to be able to rejoin the culture and bring you guys all back with me and like let go of that protection. I mean, it's years, unfortunately, but that is kind of like, it's not going to change all of a sudden, and it's a journey. But yeah, don't know where that came from, but that's sort of made me think of what you had said.
It was meant to be. Whatever you say, it's meant to come out and be heard.
Yeah, yep.
So one thing I've noticed is that shows we hear bands, and specifically Peter from Goose will say GrooveSafe, like when he's on stage and he wants to, just remind the audience to be kind to each other and all that. So we hear that little snap, and it's a great little thing to say, but we also know that there's way more to this work than that. So what is at the heart of what fans should be doing to protect each other at shows, and sort of how can we be, I guess, like dig a little deeper than just, that one liner and saying it at a show and expecting, because you're talking about culture change, right?
Yeah, which is a huge journey. I think I've said journey like 400 times, but it feels like that's like the topic for me today, or like the theme. So the idea, first of all, that GrooveSafe is becoming a verb or an action or a statement is, to me, reflecting that the work is working.
Yes.
But again, I afraid sometimes it gets misused, but to me, it's on people's minds. It's on the topic. The bands are saying it. So the approach that I've had since with the organization, the nonprofit, is it's fans, it's bands, and it's venues. You can't have a concert without those three things. And the fans are responsible for the behavior eventually. We should be responsible for our behaviors. And then the bands have the influence. So a lot more people are going to pay attention when the band member speaks in the mic, if it's Goose or anybody else, especially right. Goose. One of the only bands that continued to talk to the audience about GrooveSafe, with using the word in the organization, all this, and bringing us on tour and stuff like that. But, and then again, we'll get to venues at some point in either today or another time, but that they hold the space. So there's the three pieces of it. And when the bands speak on it, like I said, it's influential. But again, it's only in that moment. Maybe someone will go read about it, but it's up to the fans to change their actions and behaviors. So what we do is recommend if you guys know, it's called active bystander intervention. It's known in this field. And quick background is the bystander effect is where the more people gather and an incident occurs, the less likely people are to step in because they think somebody else is already doing something. So you see someone getting hurt or something, because there's so many people around you, your brain tells you someone's already helping them. Look at all these people. Someone's already, I don't need it. It's not my problem. And not maliciously either. But so active bystander intervention comes from the idea where passive would be to watch and let it go, and active would be to do something. So we talk about it. We adapted it a little bit to be more live music friendly and, to understand it better that way. But there are ways that you can step in. Our whole lives, we say, people, you read it, you hear it, see something, say something. Cool, but it stops there with that instruction. So we here at GrooveSafe and other people who understand this and do this work, but what, right? So if someone said, see something, say something, like, cool. And then what? You leave it open to way too much interpretation, including people say, oh, I see someone harassing them and I'm just going to go knock their lights out. And I say, oh, whoa, like, hold on. Punching someone is adding a second round of trauma and violence to the person who experienced it in the first place. And I didn't realize that. And okay, that's what I'm here for, right? So you're putting them in a position where they're going to go through a second round of trauma. We don't want to re-traumatize. So that's what I'm saying, is leaving it open could be more harmful. So we try to teach the bystander intervention skills, which I like to call GrooveSafe de-escalation skills, because
I like that term better.
I feel like it is exactly what it needs to be.
Yeah.
The word intervention, people are like, well, I don't want to. And then also, bystander, it almost, people think like, well, I'm not a bystander. I'm like, well, you are actually literally, that's what it's defined as. But hey, by the way, what you can do is de-escalate. And that reminds you in the conversation that your goal is to help, not just necessarily stop it, but like help in with more of a plan. So, I mean, I don't know if now's a good time to go through them. That can be helpful for listeners, or if you guys want to break them, go shift gears and come back to that. But
I think, I guess just one quick follow-up question. And I'm actually working toward a research project on this in part, but my hunch is that there's a stigma in the jam band scene where when you're talking about being like active in doing something, which I love using GrooveSafe as like it's an action, because that really is what is at the crux of changing the culture, is it has to be an action, right? Like you can't be that passive bystander. But my hunch is that in our scene, there's this stereotype of like, oh, be mellow, man, don't get involved, it's not my business. And so people maybe are less likely to want to work toward de-escalation. Do you have any thoughts on that? Or do you think that is an additional barrier perhaps within this community?
I do at first, until people take the time to listen to the skills themselves, because only one of the 4 that we talk about are direct confrontation. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to be a hero. You don't have to be on call, on guard. Like, you don't go to a show to be a soldier. You go to a show to enjoy it. That's what we all want you to do. That's the goal.
Right.
So I think that it maybe a little part of it where people maybe won't choose the confront or, the direct skill where you go and say, hey, is this person bothering you? That's not the best term, but like, hey, do you know this guy? Or, I think you're annoying, go away, whatever. That's not really de-escalation either. I feel like here's the truth. And this is honest for you guys, is I don't use the direct or confront skill myself, because I don't feel like I'm strong enough or safe enough ever to use it. But there are people who have that personality that don't mind just being like, this feels weird. Like, what's going on here? And that is okay, because you're not F you, man. You're not punching them. You're not whatever. Right. But for me, the key skill is what we call interrupt or distract. And that's when you literally stop the moment and you go to the person being harassed, not the harasser, not the offender. Because then you go to someone who I would do, someone if I was physically matched with them. If it was a woman getting harassed, I would feel comfortable going up and saying, what's the name of this song again? I can't remember. And I talk about it in all the different communities for each band, but like, what's like the song? Like, what would you guys say? Like maybe like Hot Tea or Acadia, or like something that, okay, everybody knows the name of the song. And maybe Goose might be too young to have a bouncing around the room type of thing, but you could know the song and you could know exactly that the person knows the name of the song, but that doesn't matter, because all you have to do is think of anything. Where's the water fountain? You look just like my sister, or like, dude, I swear you're my cousin's doppelganger. I don't care. Oh, be weird, make up something. But what it does is interrupts the moment. And if they need you, they'll stay engaged with you. If they don't, they'll answer the question and go back to what they were doing. So you can't be wrong. And that is what we're saying is you see someone uncomfortable, they're probably uncomfortable. You don't have to decide whether or not they're in trouble, or like, don't think of it that way. Think of it as, this feels weird, let me check it out. And you don't have to go and start a conflict. You just can. I've dropped, my coat. So it's like, oh, what's happening? Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, sorry. Fine. Noticing everything's cool. Good. I said, like, you can't be wrong. So that's where people would hesitate to, start something, get in the way, be, be annoying or ruin the vibe, right? That's what we were saying. That's where it came from, is like, got to be chill, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you can be chill by just interacting like a human would. Any time in your life has someone asked you the time of day and you said, why? Like, they need to know if it's, if it's 5 o'clock yet or something, and so you have to look at it that way, as no harm, no foul. And again, like I said, it doesn't always have to be you, but somebody has to do something, and, it might be your turn every time, but nothing's gonna, it's only going to help because it'll deter, those behaviors eventually. Because if we're looking out for each other, then, again, like I said, you're not going to be on guard, but if everyone sort of has it in their mind to check on each other, then everyone else knows that everybody's checking on each other, or should be. And even again, and I'm just going to keep talking for a second to get through to this second skill really fast, or third, is I call it check-in. So it's the check-in skill. It's formerly known as in the D's as, well, it's good if I remembered it. I don't right now, but let's call it, I got nervous. Let's call it check-in. So what you do is you delayed brain there. So the delay skill is checking in later. So you see something happening, you don't feel safe enough to enter the environment or the space or the situation. Then you can do a lot of healing for somebody by going 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour at set break, anything later, and be like, hey, I saw that, that girl seemed to be really bugging you. Maybe I'm wrong. My friends are over here though. If you need anything, like our group is chill. You're always welcome. And a lot of times they're like, oh no, thanks so much, but I'm cool. I know, what a loser. Like, ugh. And then it's over. But that check-in validates their experience and lowers the probability of like trauma later, or being stuck with the thoughts of blame and fear and all that for the rest of the night. So that in itself is a skill that is considered part of a active bystander intervention skill. So those are some of the ways that we can do these things. And again, I can always go over them again if people want to email me, or it's on the website too. We have it on all the tables. We have an bystander 101 training on our website. It's groovesafe.org/training. You guys will help me put that.
We'll make sure all the links.
Yeah, but we do. It's a little long. It starts with my full story, and then it goes into the training, and then there's a question and answer. So if anyone's listening, is like, oh God, Ashley, an hour? I'm not doing that. You could do it in bits and pieces. You can pause it. It's on YouTube. But do yourself a favor, because everything that you can learn to do this is going to help your peers, and it's going to help us keep wanting to come back to shows. Because I know for fact from insider work on this that there are people that just don't want to go to concerts anymore.
Yeah.
So that's not fair.
And a lot of it seems very intuitive when you start to hear people's stories, but it's about being intentional, I think, where, these small little nuances really matter. And like you said, can really make or break a situation as far as, being traumatized later down the road or whatever. We don't have to talk about this, but another thing that I was thinking of, so my end to caring about this stuff is campus sexual assault. And that's what I've researched for years. There's a lot of people in my field who say if either or both parties are intoxicated, then there can be no consent. And we know that at jam band shows, there is a lot of substance use. Not everyone, obviously, but there is a lot. And so what role does that play? And sort of how do you think through the programming that you're doing and the awareness campaigns you're doing, knowing that you can't just have it's not like a college campus where you can say, well, this is a dry campus. Like there's going to be substances, right?
Yeah. That's a good question. It's a good point. And it's interlaced in the program at all times. Is first of all, we talk about accountability. So there's a few ways that can happen is holding your friends accountable. And that means, having hard conversations or even introducing GrooveSafe while you're pre-gaming. If Jenny always takes 7 shots before the concert. And at the concert, she causes trouble for other people. You can say, hey, Jenny, let's take a shot together. I'll buy you a beer in the venue. So you have the ability to suggest that accountability, because controlling your buzz is one of the most important things. Like, we all like to party. Well, not all, some, most. It's okay to like to party. I think we've all done it. But if you're partying or your buzz gets to a point, like I said, that you're putting other people's safety at risk, now it's not your partying. It's not, I mean, your partying is now causing trouble, and it's not like, oh, I'm fine, I can handle my drugs. Okay, cool. But you don't act correctly towards your peers while on that, at that level, right? So I think that my point was the idea is having conversations. Hey, last night, man, you were wasted. Like, ooh, and you don't have to necessarily call people out either. You can just bring it up. Hey, did you know Ashley's doing this thing called GrooveSafe? And she kind of talks about blah, blah, blah. And then if you start to bring up a topic, you might get to, hey, calling them out, but you might just put it in their little wheel, like get their wheel turning. And, it's not that fun when your friends are all wasted. Have some fun. But controlling your buzz is a major part of this conversation, because of course there's substance use. And like, some people, that is their, some people call it church. It's their religious awakening to have those experiences. But again, control it, or make sure you understand consent and understand, if you don't act right, how that affects the people around you. Because then otherwise that's really selfish, because now you're wanting a specific experience and ruining other people's experience that you're chasing. And so that is just a kind of conversational accountability sort of talk that you can just have with your people. I think maybe that is along the lines of what we're thinking.
No, totally.
Yeah. I love
that.
I love the idea of, and I talked about this a little before we started recording, but just this notion of talking about things before they happen. I think too often we wait for the bad things to happen, and then we want to, postmortem after the fact, right? Which we still should do. But what I really love about GrooveSafe is it's such a proactive approach to injecting consent culture and making consent culture part of live entertainment and part of the music scene. And the most effective movements have always been proactive. It's never on a defensive side of things. It's always about how do we, equip people with the tools and skills they need to act in the moment when something does happen. Because, hopefully more often than not, those skills don't need to be used. But if we don't have them, then we don't have those in our toolbox to utilize when the thing does occur. And so I just love this notion of making sure that the way that GrooveSafe goes about this and helping people understand, it's something you should be thinking about before you go to a show. It's something you should be talking about before you go to a show, like even at dinner right before you're going, or as you're pre-gaming, talk about it then, all of that stuff where it's like, don't wait until something bad happens to think about it after the fact.
And
think about the possibility. Yeah, that's the culture. So think about the possibility of something happening and what your role would be in that moment, right? I just love all of that.
Yeah, thanks. Because I was thinking most of us are going to go again, especially the ones that aren't affected by other people's behaviors or haven't experienced it. But if they're causing trouble, it's like you have a conversation. So it can happen after, but it's, again, the goal is to talk about the next time. So like, just do better next time. Or, we all have made mistakes, and I wouldn't be talking to any human ever if people didn't make mistakes. I mean, that is okay. So forgive yourself and forgive, your friends. But once you know something, now you know it, and now you're responsible. And people sometimes come to me with a lot of guilt, and they say, hey, like, either I saw something, I didn't react for myself, or I did make a mistake. And I say, you can't know what you didn't know, but now you know. So now you have to do something about it. You don't have to like go march down the street, but you have to start to realize that, you can't ignore it anymore, because that was an excuse before, but now you've given another chance, or probably more than one. So do better next time, because I can't stand people say, "Oh, that he's like that. He's like that when he's drunk." I'm like, I don't care if he's like that when he's drunk. I don't care if he's like that when he wakes up. I don't care if he's like that on a Tuesday afternoon, doing a spreadsheet. Like, it doesn't matter. Whatever you're like right now is hurting somebody. So let's have these conversations. And again, do better next time. I don't know. I think
I love it, because it's all about accountability. And I'm that friend that goes, that comes out of shows and I can't drink. So I'm the one that's coming out sober. And so before we go into the next show, I'm like, all right, guys, let's sit down and let's talk about, what we need to do to improve for tonight. And, and what everyone's limits are. We're going to talk about limitations and what I know you can handle, what I know you can't handle, because I'm not babysitting at the end of the night tonight. And so, it sounds to me that GrooveSafe is a lot of accountability and making sure that you're accountable for your actions. And, and just like you said, you don't know if you don't know, but next time you know. So, let's use those things and not just call, I know a lot of people that go to concerts and they're like, "Oh, we're at a concert," and they're just going wild, which I do too at concerts. I'm not going to say I don't. I am definitely wild, but definitely know your limitations and don't surpass them. Don't just go completely crazy, because we have other people to think about too. And once our space is getting into other people's space, that's a problem. And
right.
So,
and it was interesting. Our last show, we talked about, the last show y'all were here before this, we all talked about where we like to sit, or where we like to be in a venue. And it was really interesting, the motivating factors that we each had. And it was really mostly safety, where we felt safe, where we felt comfortable, where we felt we could breathe, where we felt we'd have enough space for ourselves. And it was, all four of us, all the people that make up the Goose Chicks podcast crew, we all were really motivated by those specific things. Like, where do we feel the safest? Where is our safe spot? Whether it's in this corner or with my crew here or up front at the rail, or I like to be on this side near the ADA because it's more space on that side. And that really got me thinking, like, wow, I bet so many, people go to concerts and don't think about those things, right? They don't have to have a secondary set of things they run through to think about, okay, where am I going to be positioned and how am I going to be? And the other thing is, I think it was the first or second episode of the show. I was at the first To Boost tour, and there were these two guys behind me, and they were having a conversation about consent. And I was floored. I really couldn't believe it. I'd never heard it before. There was no women around. They couldn't even, I had my headphones in. I just wasn't playing anything, and they didn't know I was listening. And they were like, yeah, you got to be really careful. You can't be dancing up on girls at Goose shows. You can't be doing all of that stuff. And then the other guy literally goes, yeah, consent's really important. And my head, like, I just hadn't even heard anything like that. And these were younger guys, I would say definitely, 30 or younger. And I was sitting there thinking, wow, Ashley's really permeating the culture so effectively. And it speaks a lot to what you were saying about Goose being so intentional about bringing you on tour and talking about that from the stage during the show, where like you hear on the soundboards, Peter saying these things, right? It's not even just the people in the room that get to hear this, those listening after the fact or going back to listen to old shows, they'll still hear that message coming from, the folks that they paid all this money to come and see, and how powerful that can be. And I literally was like texting all my friends. I was like, you're not going to believe these two guys behind me are talking about consent at this show. And it was really a moment of me being like, wow, maybe things are changing. Maybe things are getting better. Maybe
at least
we're making a little bit of headway. Maybe there's some hope out there, and that we can grow more of us that are aware and able to kind of share this information and loop them into GrooveSafe, so that whatever shows they're going to, it doesn't matter where, that they take that with them, and they take that knowledge with them and kind of spread it wherever they go and whatever shows they go to.
It's like, that's really cool to hear. I did hear it on the opening episode. I love that. And that's exactly what I want is people can be allies. You guys, we talked about this a little bit more. All genders have responsibility to be allies. But because harassment occurs there's more likely to happen to women. When you hear men speaking on it, it's really humbling. And it's like I said, it gives me hope, but it means somebody's listening, because my goal is to have these conversations continue. The more you talk about it, the easier it is to talk about, the more likely you might bring it up again because it went well last time. And even just a passing comment in line, like that is what we want, because I'm a little bit emotionally moved at the moment, because it's really, that's the goal. I mean, you can be an ally by learning the bystander skills, the de-escalation skills. You can be an ally by believing people, like this is happening. So a lot of times people say that it's no big deal, you made it up, and that's victim blaming, like Hannah was kind of talking a little bit about. We can do another episode on like little topics at a time if it's easier or something, but victim blaming is an issue. Because, and the term is kind of frustrates me, because victim blaming is just so misleading. It's basically just trying to put fault on the person who was harassed or hurt or assaulted because there's no other obvious answers. So it's quick to be like, oh, you're wasted. No wonder, like, blah, blah. Or, oh, yeah, well, look, you have half of a shirt on. No wonder people want to touch you. Like, no. None of that is a reason or an invitation to get touched, groped, assaulted, or anything like that.
I have some hairy ass guy friends who go shirtless and wear tutus, and they don't get harassed. It's so weird.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Trust me, I know. But there are men who do. There are non-binary folks.
That's true. That's true.
You know, and that's another problem that I have with this. That's why I really focus on the culture shift, is because historically cis men are conditioned to, what I say is like it. So say a woman gropes a man, the men have been trained in their world that they're supposed to like and accept that behavior because a hot girl is touching them. But guess what? Your wife could be there. The wife could be in the bathroom. She could be literally giving birth, whatever. But you don't have to like being assaulted, because we've been in the gender world have been told that if a hot girl hits on you, then you're like king of the world. Like that is not, you don't have to like being hurt.
You don't have to be in a relationship to feel that way. You know, I've had guy friends who have had hot girls hit on them and they're just not interested, and they might even be single, you know? So
yeah, again, you're right. I didn't mean to like, totally. It's an easy way for people to understand as well, but you are very right. And again, you know, you could be a queer person, you could be in a partnership or not, you could just not like being touched, straight up. Like, it doesn't matter. We need to really focus on asking permission to touch people. Like, it is something that is just so frustrating. So no matter how you identify, like, whatever, I think this all came from being an ally. So it's like, just really like help each other. I lost my train of thought a little there because I just so passionate, guys. But
I agree with you. Like when I'm there and people just going to the bathroom, I'm like, I'll touch people. I'm like, excuse me, I'm sorry. Excuse me, I'm sorry. But then people will come by me and just totally just knock me out, almost spin me around and not say anything. And I just kind of looking, you know, you're just kind of looking like, wow, did that just really happen? And, you know, nothing said. And so, you know, so it doesn't have to be just sexually. It's, you know, all the way around and these type of spaces. And this is what I think of, like going to the restroom and stuff, you know, like I don't want to interrupt people's space and their good time. And, you know, they're dancing, they'll have their eyes closed, and, you know, that it's just upsetting when someone just automatically touches you and you're not expecting to be touched. You know, it's shocking and it's upsetting to anyone. And so if it's done in a worse, malicious way, it's even worse. So, you know, so just thinking about that we're all there to have a good time, and just being careful, even when you're touching someone going to the restroom, and, not to just think like, oh, I'm going to the restroom there in this way, just being careful and just touching people and, letting them know if you're passing them by just carefully and being nice about it.
And something I can put in here too is that GrooveSafe recommends a shoulder tap and only a shoulder tap. Because it is loud. You can't be expected to hear every excuse me, but try not to cross the touch barrier until you have to. And then it's just a simple shoulder tap, because a lot of people, I've taught this, and I've actually rehabbed some people on this, but that please don't touch people on the small of their back. Don't run your hand up their back. Don't rub their head. Don't tickle their armpit. It is too much, and it can trigger trauma. And
do people really do that?
Oh my! If we had another hour, I would list everything either I've heard or has happened. But the double squeeze, or blah blah blah. It's a power move, and we want to try to shift the behavior that the only time you need to touch someone, that if they don't know it's coming, is a little shoulder tap. Because yes, you are in a tight space. You're gonna expect someone to bump into you, stumble, whatever. None of that's malicious. But if you have to touch someone, please try to only touch them on their shoulder. And that is just a small tip, because, armpits to knees is the no zone. With intention,
right, yeah.
Thinking Hannah's thinking.
Just that, part of it is contextual too, right? Because if one of my guy friends who I know really, really well and I love and adore came up and, touched me or whatever, that's very different than even someone I barely know, or if it's a stranger. So it's not to say that you can't show affection or you can't embrace with people, but it's about, what's the context there? How well do you know this person? Do you know their boundaries? Do you know, are they a hugger? Are they not a hugger? Right?
That sounds sounds like a scenario where consent was pre-established.
Yeah.
Where you have a relationship with someone, it's okay. That's where not you now, but where people will start to be like, well, this, well, that. And I say, hey, you guys, we're not talking about being prude, being boring.
Exactly.
I want people to express themselves, but you have to just establish that consent and get that permission from them, and honestly, if I don't know you that well, and I was like this and that and huggy and lovey that one day, I still need you to check in with me, because I might be sober and having a bad day, and a simple, overexpression, it could have hurt, upset me. So anyways, I think it's establishing consent and checking in, because I might change my mind if anybody has every right to change their mind. But you said something too, Hannah, that reminded me of something that I like to remind people too, is another shift in culture, and a recommendation that I have is, instead of people in this, our lovely little hippie wook world, is you meeting someone for the first time and they go in hot, I'm a hugger. And then all of a sudden you're being hugged and touched. And so instead of saying I'm a hugger and going in without permission, start trying to say, hey, are you a hugger? With the hug gesture, but give them a moment to decide. Because then you can both be huggers. Everyone loves a wook hug from now and again. But sometimes you don't want to. Maybe you're sick. Maybe you had a bad day. Blah 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 blah. Maybe you're usually a hugger. But ask the person if they're a hugger, and that's a really good small, tiny change that is going to make a huge difference. Because I ask people for hugs, and usually they're like, "Of course, man." I'm like, "Okay, well, let's start asking." Because it's weird at first, but can I hug you is like, oh, it feels so good to be asked that question. And guess what? You're going to get a longer hug, and you're going to get really snuggled.
That's going to be the best hug. The hug that came from an invitation is and
that happens all the way down the sexual scale too, guys.
The first time I ever did consent programming at a festival, I had this conversation with the guy who came to our tent. He had been at the medic tent and came to our tent after. And he said, one thing he had learned was he feels like a lot of women he dates are still like old fashioned and they want the man to make the first move. And he has learned like, that's not okay, like consent wise. And so instead of asking, can I kiss you? He'll say, I'd really like to kiss you. Can I kiss you? And so he's still like adhering to that cultural norm of the man is supposed to make the first move, but he's doing it in a consensual way. And it was such a really cool conversation and a really cool moment of doing this work. So I think it's like you said, those little nuanced changes to the language we use really makes a difference.
And giving people the autonomy to decide for themselves, right? Not you deciding for them. That's what I really took when you were saying that about the asking of the question. It's like, okay, I'm putting the ball in your court so that you can control the situation. You can decide what is coming at you rather than me deciding
doing it
for
together
you.
Too.
Yeah,
Like exactly like building on that is because I don't want everybody to think this is like cancel culture and worried everything like, oh my God, I can't touch or talk to anybody or do anything. Like, no way. That's not what this is. It's giving the person a choice and then deciding together. And that is what makes this so powerful. Because I don't want you to decide for me. And then I don't want you to be like, snarky about it. Like, people say like, oh, sorry, Ashley, GrooveSafe. And I'm like, hey, whoa. I love a hug the most. Like, I just want to decide if I'm there for it. And then you get way more from it. And you get really, it becomes mutual when both people are participating in the decision. It sounds like it takes 20 minutes. It doesn't. This is all a split second.
It's so fast. It's so quick.
You offer your hand to someone, they'll take it or they won't. It's a meeting in the middle. It's people say, how do I know? You don't. You offer what you have, and then you make a choice together on it. And I think just people forget those small little things. They happen so fast, but small shifts are really.
And it's also the person just saying, there are days Leslie has seen like, I'll be super peppy and upbeat and want to hug everyone and talk to everyone. And then there are certain days I'm just like, I'll tell people straight up, I'm like, not really in the mood today. I'm just, I love you. I'm just going to be over here. I'm just not feeling it today. And my anxiety is like super high. And so I say that before anyone comes towards me because I'm just like, I don't want for anyone to be like offended because, most days I'm super upbeat, super peppy. And so can also us be just like, hey, I love you, man. Seeing someone just not into it today, just staying back, just not feeling it. And that communication. And that takes a split second just to say to people, and then instead of someone being upset, like, oh, I can't believe, and just be straight up and honest, like, in a super happy mood and then read people too, are they feeling the best? They don't look like they're feeling the same way today. So how are you doing? And just like you said, it takes a split second.
That's why you were encouraging vocalizing these things because a lot of misconceptions are also out there when it comes to consent. And because, making eye contact with someone is not consent. Especially at a show, like if someone's feeling good and they catch your eye, like they're probably looking at the sparkly light behind you. You know what I mean? So
true.
Let's be serious. If you think you get a vibe, go figure it out. Ask for it. Check it out. Check the vibe. Hey, what's up? What's going on? Like, it doesn't have to be so rigid either. You can still,
Play it cool.
I mean, I even hate to say you can hit on someone without being disgusting. Like if you're interested, like that's life. Like we don't want to change these, these moments that can be really beautiful. We just need it to be done respectfully and have people start to think about it just a tiny bit of in a different way.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's funny. One thing I've noticed is people will ask before they take a picture with you. And it's such an interesting thing that folks connect consent with your visual image, but they often don't extend it to your physical body. Right. And it's such I have that happen to me all the time. Oh, can I take a picture with you? Can we take a selfie? They understand what consent means. And so I'll often use that as an example. I'm like, hey, you wouldn't just take a picture with somebody without asking. So why would you touch them without asking as well?
Wow,
I'll push that and they'll like, it's like a little light bulb will go off. They're like, oh yeah, I wouldn't just take a picture of them. I would ask. So you do understand consent. We're just trying to make sure you have it in a full context of the full autonomy of each individual person that you happen to come in contact with, and your own autonomy as well. So yeah, that's one thing I've used when people try to be like, I don't quite get it. I'm like, okay, well, let me ask you if you've ever done this. And they'll be like, oh yeah, I do always ask if I'm taking a picture with somebody or if I want to take a picture of them. And so that's a little trick I've used to kind of get people to like connect the two. Like, you know what consent is, but you also have to apply it in these other areas as well. Yeah.
And like, again, we're not trying to like, teach people how to live their everyday lives, but let's think about it specifically the reason I started this work was because of like malicious predatory behavior. And that is out there and it is happening. But these basic things are going to influence your peers to act just slightly different. And then like my vision is that means the less likely the really bad stuff will happen, because we're creating a space that doesn't allow for any gray area. Every scenario is different. Like we said, it's, this is not black and white, but we're not talking about making a mistake and forgetting to ask someone to hug them. But those sorts of things are building blocks that are going to lead to an environment where there's no tolerance for, we're talking about harassment. We're talking about sexual assault. We're talking about, butt slaps, body grabs, chest grabs, and men get their junk grabbed, and these things are they're really gross and they're really wrong and they're criminal. And we need to know that, because us here on this panel know that we're trying to come up with solutions. And that's my whole thing, is education and trying to make it easier to understand. But the really big main problem is pretty nasty. Yeah. So as long as I just remember to say like, hey, wait a minute, don't forget that we are still, this comes from really, really bad behaviors. So that's I just wanted to, because we are talking about really good stuff. And I think that it's important to know that they're different.
Well, for sure. And I think it's like, helping people understand, or I hope our listeners understand that really bad things are happening, and part of shifting the culture is so that we're all more aware to stop those bad things from happening. Like, it's about all of us coming together, and that the more all of us are aware, the more in tune we are with each other, the more aware we are of what we can do, the fewer of those really bad incidents that can happen. And so that's why I'm so excited about the Goose community and Goose the band embracing GrooveSafe, because we don't want to bring, bad habits and bad things from other scenes and from general music scenes into this space, or we want to try and create a space where things are a little bit different, or things can be approached differently, and we can have more open conversations about things and talk about that. One of the first incidents that I actually witnessed at a Goose show was a man that was being inappropriately touched on the rail. And, he like turned around and like said something, really forcefully to the person. And then afterwards was in one of the Goose forums and had apologized for his behavior in the moment. And we were all like, no, like, you reacted how you needed to react. You were the one being violated. You don't need to apologize. And they were like, why? I didn't want to make anybody, feel bad up there. I'm like, no, the priority is your safety. Our good time only can happen because we're safe. Right. And that was something that also stuck out for me too, which is people feeling like, oh, if they react or if they say something, that they're, somehow bringing everybody down, or like making a big scene, or doing something that they need to apologize for. And I'm like, no, the other person is the person that needs to deliver the apology. You are just reacting humanly to something that happened to you, and that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. You make a really good point. Gosh, and that's the thing is unfortunately it is happening at Goose shows. It's happening everywhere where people gather. So a lot of this, and the reason I brought up the really kind of reminder about really bad behavior is because a lot of times in the middle of conversations, people will start to shut GrooveSafe down and be like, this is your snowflakey, horrible comments that people say about how it's, complaining about things that aren't a big deal. But the things I'm really talking about are a really big deal, like you're saying, like these assaults. And on that note, you reminded me of something that a lot of the reason we encourage the de-escalation and bystander awareness is because when you are actually the victim or in the middle of being harassed, your brain goes into survival mode because, let me finish the thought and then I'll explain why. But so you guys know fight or flight is very common term, but a lot of times there's something that happens called freeze where you're just shut down completely and you can't act, react, comment, move, whatever. Also, there's one that they call friend, which is you try to be buddy with the person that's trying to hurt you. It seems like you're having fun because your brain says, be really fun and friendly and cool, change this moment and make them like you. And those things aren't your fault and you have zero control over them because it's a brain chemical. I'm not a neurologist, but I do know that there's a release and it's their survival. So I get a lot of feedback and questions, and sometimes it's trolling behavior towards me that's like, well, why doesn't person just tell them to screw off and get them to get out of their way? And sometimes you literally can't. So a couple things, don't blame yourself like this person. If you react a certain way in self-defense and or as a result of somebody violating you, it's not your fault. And, so if you didn't react or you overreacted in terms of whatever that is defined as overreacting, I don't know, it sounds like he stood up for himself, which is what I wish I could do instead of freeze. Yeah. But that is why, like I said, the bystander stuff is really important, because if someone's in a freeze mode, it's up to you to kind of rescue them from that. And that's what the community awareness and the community piece is, and why everybody does have a say in this, or not a say in this, but it is involved, even if you don't think you are, because people can't do that. You can't always react the way that you want to. And on the same note, same long breath, is reporting goes so underreported because of that idea of ruining the vibe, or I don't want to be the one causing a problem, or it's not that bad. Oh, it's my fault. That's all victim blaming towards yourself. And it's what we've been taught. And so it's hard, but we're trying to make it easier to speak up, talk about this stuff. If it's in the moment or later, hey, this happened to me last night, guys, let's talk about it, whatever. Or, getting help. We never even talked about the skill about delegating. That's when you do go get help. You bring in another human to help you in a situation when you see something. Because it could be security, it could be a stranger, it could be your friend next to you, it could be literally anybody nearby. Because there are moments you can't do it yourself when you want to try to step in and be a bystander. But all long-winded to say that reporting is a problem. And that's why we want to change the culture and change the behaviors and have the awareness and the tips and skills, because there are moments that the person in trouble or victim can't really take action. And it's scary to do reporting. It's so underreported. And that's why there's not a lot of metrics on trauma, because it is terrifying to speak up. So again, if you haven't told your story, don't feel like there's nothing wrong with you if you're not ready to talk about it too. So
I want to be respectful of your time. So some things that I think you sort of touched on, but if you want to say anything else about either fans and their responses to your work, and audience and fans and their response to your work, I think you kind of touched on that. And then I think really important is, what can we expect from GrooveSafe in 2023, and how can folks listening potentially volunteer or support your work, get involved, that sort of thing?
So did you say response, band and fan response? I missed the beginning.
Okay. So I didn't actually explicitly ask questions about what the response was to GrooveSafe, but I think you sort of touched on it organically. So I just wanted to see if there was anything else you wanted to say about that.
Yeah, so I think that the initial response is overall positive because people are like, thank God, finally. Like, I was too afraid to say anything. It's really awesome that, you know, because my goal is to give people a voice or be the voice because it's really difficult. And does this actually happen? I've never seen it, not doubting it or the denial piece, but more just really on not knowing. So that was the awareness piece. But it was welcomed, I guess. And there's always trolls. There's always people that are going to tell me I'm not going to say here. I don't want to give them the time of day, but the things that people accuse me of my motivation behind doing this work. And none of that is true. I only want to help people. Like, I only want to myself go back into concerts and feel comfortable. And I want everyone else to feel that way. But so generally it has been positive and people are happy. And it's I know the work is changing things a little bit because at shows, especially with bands I've been working with for a while, fans will, instead of saying, what is this and why are you here? People are starting to thank me for being there and say they actually came to the show tonight alone, knowing that we were going to be there because even though they'd known nobody, they knew that we would always like be out in the lobby or have a chair for them or, you know, there's a little added comfort. So I think that that's an important piece of it. Sure. And then for this year, we have a couple new bands that we're going to start working with. I'm actually leaving for Humphreys McGee tour tomorrow. We've been partners with them for a little bit over a year or so. I am doing the the Mid-Atlantic run with them. I don't know when this is airing, I forget. So, but I'll be on Humphreys tour for 2 weeks. And then we're doing a couple really important venue projects with larger venues. So that's going to be, like we had said earlier, is the venues are the space holders. So they're the third piece of the puzzle. And then again, we're going to continue to work with bands and our fans and our people just to keep having these conversations. And the best way to get involved is our website, groovesafe.org. There's tips, there's volunteer signups. We need everything from table leads to, admins if you have a professional skill. This is all started grassroots. We are a 501c3, so nonprofit would always be asking for donations and cash and help because everything goes directly back to the mission. We want to do research and development and also continue to be physically at shows and we're building programs and everything costs money. But I can tell that things are starting to work and things are starting to, like we talked about before, you guys, GrooveSafe is a verb sometimes. Yeah. So I feel like we're getting somewhere. And like I said, people are thanking us for our presence instead of asking us what we are. So I'm feeling like that slowly, and it's the Goose community has been really good. The guys are really great. So I'm not sure what Goose shows we're doing quite yet, but I know we'll be back out there.
Awesome. I've heard just great things about y'all and also I talked to you about the Billy Strings crew reaching out, right? Yes. And so that I've only heard great things about it. So I'm excited that it's, that it's going and growing and and
Billy Strings is definitely, it's on my list. It's something that I'm really passionate about. So we are going to try to start to work in that community. So that'll be really cool. And continue in the Goose community. And yeah, we need help. Anything that anybody wants to do is we're open to suggestions. It's a big brand and a small team, but it's growing and scaling and it's really exciting. It's hard work. Don't get me wrong, but it's exciting that people are starting to listen.
That's very exciting. I'm excited for y'all because it's a very important message. And I don't think, like you said, that some people will have a negative connotation with it, but it's so positive and it's such a good thing. And I'm so thankful that this community does have such a positive outlook on it and can help, like the Taboos tour, like you said, the people coming out and saying positive things and getting it to grow in a positive manner. And because it is so important. And I'm happy that you're with us and you decided to come out and do music and not stay home and change the world. So thank you very much.
You guys will, I wouldn't open doors without people like you giving me, platforms and spaces to talk about it. So I appreciate you guys very much.
Thank you. And
I was thinking too, is like I said it earlier, but if you guys ever wanted to do small pieces on specific topics or little learning things, or, like maybe, 20 minutes on really what is victim blaming. I know Hannah has a lot of knowledge on that. We could talk about something a little bit more detailed, and because this is very general and really, really important for the first time people, but there are people that know a lot about it that want to really know to how to dive into more of the specifics and learn more. So we can do that sometime.
I'd love to do that. Maybe we can we'll have some conversations. We just had a production meeting 2 days ago, but this would be something really cool to work into our live broadcast that we actually do live.
Cool.
And we could do some small, pieces in those shows, which would be really dope. We're planning on doing at least one a month. And so this would be a good way to kind of make sure we're including more education for folks along the way. So I say all that to say, Ashley, expect to see me in your inbox very, very soon.
Love it. Because I think that this is it's a long-term goal. So I think that little bits at a time. And the reason that this kind of a movement hasn't stuck in the past is because it wasn't long lasting. It's like Band-Aid, whatever. But we have to keep these skills active. We have to keep talking to new people, have new trainings, new things, and because it's going to progress as the world progresses. You know what I mean? So
absolutely. And I think it's so cool to be able to talk about it with this particular fan base, as Goose is on such an upward trajectory and gaining so many new fans consistently, that we can onboard new fans with this, kind of foundational understanding about consent and GrooveSafe. So that's such a huge shift in culture when new people come in and this is the norm, right? This is what we expect of you. This is how we interact with each other, and kind of pushing that as a central, tenet of the Goose community. So I just really thank you so much. And like I said, I'll be in your inbox very, very soon to continue. And we can't thank you enough. If you could just say your socials out loud, just so folks can follow GrooveSafe and everything, so they know where to hit those buttons.
You got it. So Facebook is at GrooveSafe. Twitter is at GrooveSafe. Instagram is at GrooveSafe_, but it does come up when you start to type GrooveSafe. And then the best way to always get in touch with me is info@groovesafe.org. I personally answer every single one. If you guys get me on my personals, I lose track of them. So come right to the inbox and I will be ready to help. We have resources. We can direct you in the right direction. I can't solve every single problem, but I can usually at least say, hey, I hear you. I see you and I hear you. But, definitely just come follow us. Following is huge. We need to open doors. Algorithms block me all day long. So share, post, talk about it, tag us. Even in things that are kind of related, just tag me, because then it'll go through, tag GrooveSafe and me. And I'll retweet anything anyone needs ever. So just get it going.
That reminds me, I think we need to normalize telling stories publicly about our experiences with you, because when we had our very first Zoom meeting to start planning this show, everyone on the Zoom call had an interaction with you. I'm not saying we needed you, and I'm not outing anyone as their survivor or anything, but everyone had an experience of being at a show and they needed that comfort and that safety that is GrooveSafe. And I was fine. I was tearing up. Just the fact that, that was my reason for wanting to do this podcast, was to spread awareness about women's issues, including this. And so, I think we need to normalize tagging you and stuff, and tagging GrooveSafe, and, having that public discourse, I guess.
Yeah. And then I can jump in if I feel like it's a time where I can educate. I don't attack online ever, but if there's a teaching moment, I'll do it. But we also, you guys have a testimonials page on our website, and you can do it anonymously. So if you email me, I'll interact with you. And sometimes we'll do storytelling on for cards on Instagram and stuff like that, but it is very difficult to read and to put out. So it's very once in a while, but the testimonials page is always on our website, and we always want stories. If people are comfortable telling them, they could be anonymous, and they don't have to be graphic. It could be very basic. But we want these stories told because the more people see what's happening, how often it's happening, and what kinds of things are happening, the more, the less likely they can just pretend it's not. And I think it's hard to tell your story. So don't if you can't, but if you're willing to, please share. And just let me know. info@groovesafe.org, and I'll let you know the process of sharing a story. But I welcome them because we really have to, I want them to just be very obvious that this is not just, I got upset because someone bumped into me while they were dancing. Like, that is not what we're talking about. So let's try to, I can be your voice, and I will, if anybody wants that.
Awesome. Thanks so much again, Ashley. Thanks for joining us. This is the first of many conversations we'll be having with you here at Goose Chicks Podcast. But thanks again for joining us. And we can't wait to see you out on the road, and we can't wait to continue, spreading the gospel of GrooveSafe and helping people, gain the skills and understanding around consent and live events. I also just wanted to give you kudos for that. In my head, kind of visual, but I was just picturing this triangle of like fan experience, fan influence, and venue space. It just was like, oh, there's really three parts to this. And so we're going to talk about that for sure.
That's our model. Really it's the business model pretty much. Because that's what I believe in. That's how I see the change. So thank you for noting that. And
really brilliant. Just brilliant. I love
copyright.
it.
It's copyrighted. I'm just kidding.
Oh yeah, I won't be using it. I just, in my head, as soon as you said it.
Not you, listeners. Don't try to do it.
I was like, wow, yeah, this is brilliant.
Yeah. And you guys also, thanks for giving me a lot longer time than normal. I know you guys don't do such long guests, so I appreciate that. I think it's really an important thing to do a full time on. So thank you for that too.
No problem. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you really soon, Ashley. Okay.
All right. Be well, guys. Thanks.
Wow. I can't say enough thank yous again to Ashley for joining us. I mean, y'all, was that not the most amazing thing? She's so brilliant, so smart. And the idea of coming to that crossroads of like giving up live music or changing the culture that she's a part of and making that choice for all of us to benefit all of us is so powerful and shows just how one person can really make a huge difference. And seeing her work, spread out and affect so many people, it's just really inspiring. So thanks again, Ashley. And as we said in the interview, you'll be hearing lots more from Ashley here on the Goose Chicks podcast. So be on the lookout for that. But we also want to hear from you. We have a voicemail line set up for all the Goose Chicks and fans of the show to share their experiences with Goose and with the jam band scene. You can call 704-275-3128 to leave us a message, and it might get played right here on the show. This week, we're asking folks to call in and tell us your favorite story about a stranger at a show. So somebody you did not know beforehand and you had a great moment with them. So give us a call. Again, that number is 704-275-3128. Goose Chicks podcast is produced by me, Leslie Mack, with support from sound engineer Matt Dwyer. Hey, Matt. Co-hosts Alexius Lipo and contributors Chelsea Long and Hannah Liebreich. Special thanks to our sponsor, Ben & Jerry's, for their support, especially Jay Curley, Jay Tandon, and their team.
We are a proud member of the Osiris Media family. You can check us out on socials at Goose Chicks Pod and our website, goosechickspod.com. As always, we encourage our listeners to support the Western Sun Foundation. Visit westernsunfoundation.org for more information.
Finally, remember to subscribe and leave us a review in your favorite podcast app. Also, tell a friend about the show. It really helps us out. Don't forget to call our number and leave us a message at 704-275-3128. Until next time, be kind to each other out there.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Osiris.